anything that suited me for that, right? So having been doing computers for all my life, basically, at that point I just decided that I'll do my own. Most of the inspiration early on came from Sun OS, which was what I was using at the university at the time.
Which university?
University of Helsinki in Finland.
From 1991 to about 1993 was really, I guess, the infancy period of Linux. That was when it was still only alpha or beta quality. It was relatively unstable, although even then it was a good deal more stable than a lot of what are now called production operating systems.
Linus used the traditional tried and true method of writing one program that does the job, and he got it to work quickly, in fact, faster than I would have thought was possible.
The term for it is monolithic, which means that basically the OS itself is one entity, indivisible, while in a microkernel, the operating system kernel is actually just a collection of servers that do different things, and then they have a common protocol for doing communication between themselves.
So why is it that if the GNU project had so much lead time, so to speak, doing this, why is it that he was able to kind of come in at the tail end,
well,
so to speak?
We actually started the GNU herd not long before he started Linux. And as it happened, though, we chose a design that's a very advanced design in terms of the power it gives you, but also turns out to be very hard to debug. We decided to divide up the kernel, which traditionally had been one program, to divide it up into a lot of smaller programs that would send messages to each other asynchronously to communicate. And the problem is that that style of programming has a great deal of potential for bugs, which are often very hard to figure out because they depend on does this program send this message before or after this one sends that message, and the result was it took us years to get the thing to work.
What is Linux's relationship to the GNU project?
Well, there's relationships to GNU on kind of multiple levels. One is just a philosophical level of thinking that making your source open is a good idea.
We know where Unix came from. We know where Linux came from. We know the how and why behind this, but we got to still kind of fill in the gaps of what Linux really is. There are two major misconceptions over Linux. One major misconception is it's only command line, text console with no graphics and really hard to use. And the other misconception is it's extremely graphical and it's no more use than a Windows 98 or a Windows 2000 computer. When the real conception of it is Linux can be whatever you need it to be. Now, if you look at the actual adoption curve of the internet, it follows Linux exactly. People were adopting Linux as fast as they were adopting the internet because people were getting all of these open source tools and building the things that they needed, or not even needed, they just wanted. They wanted something to play with. You know, Debian is my personal use of Linux right now because of my skill level with Linux. And you know, if you look at the Debian timeline, and here are just a few of the Debian distributions. You know, starting off at 93, eventually went into Corel, which turned into Xandros. Lindows went into Linspire and then branched off to FreeSpire, while Linspire still existed. Knoppix branched off to Damsmall. Damsmall branched off to Damsmall Not. And, you know, Knoppix branched off to Morphix. There's just so many things in here that I couldn't even list. Like, you know, Ubuntu has like 90 different distributions, and even Backtrack was at one point based off of Debian and Slackware. But Slackware is, in my personal experience, a little bit more complicated to use. I don't have the grasp of coding enough to use Slackware, but it's definitely a good one. You know, went from SUSE to SUSE to SunJDS to OpenSUSE, and then, you know, then they got Slacks, which turned into Mini Slacks, Nimblex, ZenWalk, and then Gentoo, and then Gentoo turned into VidaLinux, Bintu, and 1,000 other more twos. And Red Hat, which is mainly used in enterprise stuff, you know, servers and business class kind of things. Nowadays, anyway, you know, it branched out to Caldera and Connectivia, which eventually, and then Mandrake, which eventually all conspired into one single Mandriva release, and Turbo Linux and Yellow Dog and Fedora Core, and just CentOS. There's just so many of them. It's really hard to cover them all. And you look at how the internet has grown, and more people were adopting Linux because it had the tools that let you build the operating system to your need. If you needed something that was command line only, meaning it was only graphics, then that's what you build. If you wanted something that had a graphical interface, like say if you wanted something like Windows 95 or Windows 3.1, it's there. It's already there. If you wanted something really flashy with all these graphical embellishments and super huge high resolutions and 3D animations and fade effects, it's there. It's just a matter of what you want to do with it. The question is, can the hardware run the operating system? Now, that's really where Linux gives you the power. It allows you to take already existing tools, already existing hardware, and put them together to make something that you need. And in later segments, we're going to be getting into doing some of these projects, turning ordinary network-attached storage boxes into wearable computers, and turning routers into Wi-Fi repeaters and penetration testers, or turning handhelds into sniffers. And there's a million and one things. You can even run Linux on your phone. The game consoles are running Linux now. Look at the PlayStation 3. Look at the original Xbox. Well, you can run Linux on that. Even the Dreamcast. It was never intended for these operating systems to run, and the reason it can is because it's open source. Companies like Apple and Microsoft basically wrap an operating system with a pretty little bow and say, fuck you, this is what you can do. Linux, do what you want.